Welcome to Heart of Texas Histories and Mysteries. I'm your host, Em, coming to you from deep in the heart of Texas. In this first ever episode, I'll be telling you the story of one of Texas's most famous outlaws, Sam Bass. Let's get into it. Sam Bass was born on July 21st, 1851, on a farm just outside of Mitchell, Indiana. He was an orphan by the time he was 13. His mother, Elizabeth, died in 1861, and his father, Daniel, died in 1864. After the deaths of their parents, Sam and his siblings moved to their uncle's nearby farm. Sam left his uncle's home at around the age of 18 and found work at a sawmill in Rosedale, Mississippi. It appears that Sam stayed at this job for about a year before finding his way to the Lone Star State. Texas was still the frontier in those days, and it was a common destination for those seeking a fresh start in life. During his first years here in Texas, Sam earned the reputation of being an honest, hard-working young man. He served as an assistant to Sheriff Egan in Denton County, which may sound a little ironic when you consider the path Sam would end up taking. His work for the sheriff did not involve enforcing the law, as you might suspect. Rather, Sam was a farmhand, milking cows, grooming horses, and the like. Sam also worked as a teamster, which allowed him to become well acquainted with the backroads and general layout of the countryside. He would put this knowledge to use later, when he became a man on the run. Somewhere along the way, Sam bought himself a very fast mare. According to some sources, he became so focused on Saturday races that Sheriff Egan told him it was time to choose between his work and his horse races. Sam chose the latter. And in a roundabout sort of way, it was that decision that turned his life into a life of trouble. Sam never held a regular job after he stopped working for the sheriff. He did see a bit of success in his horse racing endeavors. It seems he was able to live off the proceeds for some time. But he drifted further and further into a life of drinking and gambling in saloons. In late 1875, he met a bartender by the name of Joel Collins down in San Antonio. It's said that Sam and Joel were involved in some horse racing schemes together before they drove a herd of cattle up to Nebraska, then set off for the Black Hills of South Dakota. They hoped to strike it rich in gold there, but instead found themselves flat broke. And that was when they ventured into a new type of crime. Sam and Joel, in conjunction with their friends Jack Davis and Tom Nixon, decided that robbing stagecoaches was the remedy for their financial woes. The group robbed 7 stagecoaches in a few short months, earning the name of the Black Hills Bandits. But these robberies weren't bringing in the amount of money the men had hoped for, so they turned to something bigger, robbing trains. Their gang, which had expanded to include 6 members by this point, held up a train on the night of September 18, 1877 in Big Springs, Nebraska. Sam and his cronies made off with $450 from the weigh safe and another $60,000 in gold pieces from the San Francisco Mint, badly beating the express messenger in the process. After splitting up the money, the desperados set off in pairs. Law enforcement located Joel Collins and Bill Heffridge in Kansas shortly after the crime, and both men were shot and killed. Tom Nixon is believed to have escaped to Canada, while his partner, Jim Barry, died from his wounds after authorities located and shot him in Missouri. Meanwhile, Sam Bass and Jack Davis headed for North Texas. On their way south, they actually ran into a group of detectives and soldiers who were on the hunt for the Big Springs train robbers. Sam and Jack successfully pretended that they themselves were on the lookout for the wanted men, expressing their hopes of finding the outlaws and claiming the reward money. Little did their temporary traveling companions know, they had $20,000 in gold coins from the Big Springs robbery hidden under the seat of their wagon. The pair separated from the soldiers and detectives and made it to Sam's old stomping grounds in Denton. Sam told anyone who asked that he had acquired his money prospecting in the Black Hills. Some speculate that he frittered away his $10,000 share from the robbery in Nebraska, while others swear by the legend that Sam hid his gold coins in some remote Texas cave. Either way, it appears that Sam was soon short on cash. No longer accustomed to earning money the honest and old-fashioned way, he assembled a new crew of bandits, which included Frank Jackson, Seaborn Barnes, Arkansas Johnson, Henry Underwood, and Jim Murphy. Jim Murphy would later be known as Judas. You'll see why in just a bit. The Sam Bass Gang, as it soon came to be called, held up trains at several stations in North Texas, specifically Allen, Hutchins, Eagle Ford, and Mesquite. With the exception of the Allen robbery, which brought in $1,300, none of these criminal heists was particularly profitable. Since Sam and his gang failed to find large stashes of money on two of the trains, it was widely speculated that they were intoxicated during the commission of the crimes. Or perhaps some of the armchair historians are right, and Sam committed these crimes more for the thrill than for the profit. We'll never really know, will we? After the Mesquite robbery in April 1878, the people of North Texas had had enough and began clamoring for justice. The Sam Bass Gang was just one of many groups wreaking havoc in the state during this time, and citizens were outraged over the continuing lawlessness. It wasn't long before Governor Richard B. Hubbard decided to make an example of Sam and Company, calling in the Texas Rangers to capture the men and show outlaws all over the state that Texas was not going to tolerate their antics. The Bass War had officially ignited. The hunt for the Sam Bass Gang gave the Texas Rangers the opportunity to prove their effectiveness to the public, with numerous politicians campaigning on the idea of replacing the Rangers with a new state law enforcement agency. The pressure was mounting for the Rangers to restore law and order. For several weeks, they would get on the Bass Gang's trail, only for the group of criminals to narrowly evade them, thanks to Sam's knowledge of so many thickets and backways. But the Rangers' luck changed when they found and arrested Jim Murphy for train robbery. Jim had separated from the gang, although it's hard to tell if he had intended to leave them permanently or just temporarily. In exchange for immunity and in hopes of claiming a reward, Jim struck a deal with the Rangers. He would rejoin the gang and act as a spy. The Rangers first caught up with Sam Bass on April 29, 1878, while the gang was taking a rest at Jim's house in Cove Hollow. The Rangers fired at Sam as he fled, but their shots struck his cartridge belt and the stock of his rifle, and he escaped unscathed. As the gang raced away, he allegedly said, "Hell, boys, they've hit me at last. Let's get out of here." According to legend, Sam at first went on as if nothing had happened and was even showing off his gold coins around North Texas again. But then the gang got into an altercation that some sources say involved a local posse and others say involved the Rangers. Arkansas Johnson was killed and Henry Underwood separated from the group, never to be a part of it again. Sam had to come up with a new plan. He decided that it was time to get out of North Texas and head further south, where the Rangers might not even think to look. The gang now consisted of himself, Seaborn Barnes, Frank Jackson, and Jim Murphy. Sam had heard from friends that Jim had plans to betray him. At one point, Sam and Seaborn threatened to kill Jim, who of course adamantly denied the allegations and swore his allegiance to Sam. When Frank stood up for Jim, the other two backed off. But as the men headed into central Texas, Jim managed to send a letter to the Rangers' Major John Jones, informing him that Sam and the gang had made plans to rob the Miller Exchange Bank in Round Rock. Major Jones immediately sent Rangers Chris Connor, George Harold, and Dick Ware to the town with orders to be on the lookout for the outlaws. Then he set off for Round Rock himself, with Travis County Deputy Sheriff Maurice Moore alongside him. The Sam Bass Gang arrived in Round Rock on the night of Sunday, July 14, 1878. Sam and Seaborn Barnes liked the idea of stealing some horses and robbing the bank as soon as possible, but Jim Murphy argued that it would be better to let their own horses rest a bit and rob the bank on Saturday the 20th. The gang agreed with this plan and decided on Saturday at 3:30 p.m. The day before the robbery was set to occur, Sam, Frank, and Seaborn stopped at Koppel's General Store. As for Jim Murphy, he stayed behind in the section of Round Rock known as Old Town, waiting to get in touch with Major Jones again. Ranger Ware passed the gang on the street as he headed from the livery stable to the barber shop, but didn't realize that he had just seen the men he was on the lookout for. Deputy Moore also saw the group entering the store, although it's unclear if he immediately recognized them either. In any event, it was Deputy Sheriff A.W. Grimes of Williamson County who ultimately approached Sam Bass that day. Tragically, this encounter would cost the 28-year-old former Texas Ranger his life. Although it's unclear whether Deputy Grimes was aware that it was the outlaw Sam Bass he was dealing with, we do know that he grew suspicious when he came across Sam. Some accounts state that this was because Sam was carrying a pistol. According to other accounts, the issue was that Sam was wearing 2 pistols and Round Rock only permitted an individual to wear 1. Deputy Grimes made contact with the Bass gang as they were purchasing some tobacco and asked Sam about the weapon or weapons he was carrying. Sam said something along the lines of, "I'll let you have it." He, Seaborn Barnes, and Frank Jackson then fired upon the officer 6 times, killing him instantly. Deputy Grimes, who never even had the chance to draw his own weapon, left behind a wife and 3 young children. Deputy Moore, who had been just outside, now entered the general store and shot at Sam and the other 2 bandits. He did hit Sam in the hand, but he himself was hit in the chest. Fortunately, it appears that Deputy Moore survived this injury. From there, a shootout erupted, with both members of law enforcement and private citizens firing at the gang and the gang returning fire. Ranger Ware came running out of the barber shop with lather still on his face. It has been said that a one-armed bystander, J.F. Tubbs, took up the fallen Deputy Grimes's pistol and shot at the fleeing outlaws. Major Jones, who rushed over from the telegraph office, is believed to have fired his only shot as a ranger during this incident. The bandits missed Major Jones when they fired back, with the bullet becoming lodged in a stone wall instead. Sam Bass, Frank Jackson, and Seaborn Barnes made it back to the alley where they had hitched up their horses, but Ranger Harold and a Mr. Connor caught up with them. It's unclear if this Mr. Connor was Chris Connor of the Texas Rangers, but I would guess that it was. We can deduce that Ranger Ware quickly arrived at the scene as well, since he received the credit for shooting and killing Seaborn Barnes. While Sam Bass and Frank Jackson both managed to escape the alley, Sam was gravely injured. Whether it was Ranger Harold or Ranger Ware who struck him has always been the subject of debate. Ranger Harold stated that he believed he had shot Sam Bass, but Sam himself allegedly said that the man who shot him had shaving lather on his face, and Sam was apparently able to make some comments about the timing of when he was shot that would support it being Ranger Ware. Ranger Ware stated that he didn't believe he had shot Sam. It's certainly possible that in all the mayhem, the 2 Rangers really were unsure about which of them had managed to hit Sam Bass. But we know that both law enforcement and the public at large were worried that Sam had a network of supporters who could retaliate against the person who took him down. So there's a possibility that Rangers Harold and Ware intentionally avoided giving a definitive answer as to which of them had shot Sam Bass because they feared for their own safety. Fear for the safety of law enforcement and the public was also the motivating factor behind the Texas Rangers' decision to call off the search for Sam Bass and Frank Jackson until the next morning. Jim Murphy stated that he saw the pair heading toward their camp, which was near the Round Rock Cemetery. Frank was helping Sam stay on the saddle while simultaneously loading more bullets into his gun. There's also a story that Frank noticed a little girl playing outside and warned her to get out of the way because there could soon be gunfire. According to the Williamson County Sun, Sam and Frank retrieved their belongings from the camp and went up the old Georgetown Road, now Chisholm Trail Road, before disappearing into a wooded area. By this point, Sam was in too much pain to go on. Knowing that his death was near, he told Frank to take all of the money, guns, ammunition, and provisions the gang had left and run. As it turns out, Frank did not run, but camped nearby in a spot where Sam may or may not have been able to see him. When the search party reconvened on Saturday, July 20th, the day the bank robbery was supposed to have taken place, two men by the names of Tucker and Lane noticed Sam Bass sitting on the ground, leaning against a tree. At first, they assumed that he was part of a railroad crew that was working in the area and passed him by. But something made Mr. Tucker turn back. Despite the severity of his injuries, Sam was still responsive at this point. He looked up at Mr. Tucker and said something along the lines of, "I'm Sam Bass. I'm the one you're looking for." Or, "I am Sam Bass, the man who has been wanted for so long." Jim Murphy was on hand to confirm that this was indeed Sam Bass. However, for his own protection, the search party had him stand behind a tree while making the identification. By the way, I forgot to mention this earlier, but Jim had also identified the body of Seaborn Barnes. The Texas Rangers loaded Sam into a wagon, drove him back into Round Rock, and laid him in a shack. For those of you who are familiar with Round Rock, this shack was located on a lot in the vicinity of what we now know as Round Rock Avenue, Main Street, and Mays Street. Major Jones attempted to get some information out of Sam Bass on the whereabouts of Frank Jackson and other possible cronies, but Sam wouldn't budge, saying, "If a man knows anything, he ought to die with it in him." Referring to Deputy Grimes, he also said something to the effect of, "If that man died, he was the only man I ever killed." The Rangers brought in a doctor as Sam's condition worsened, but there was nothing he could do. Ranger John Bannister, who had been tasked with guarding Sam Bass, reported that Sam's last words were, "The world is a bubble, trouble wherever you go." Sam Bass died on July 21st, 1878, his 27th birthday. The Rangers thought that bringing Sam's body down to the capital city of Austin would send a clear message that they could do their job effectively. After all, as I said earlier, the people of Texas had been questioning the Rangers' abilities, and there was a lot of talk about replacing them with a different law enforcement agency. But the Rangers had to abandon this idea, as the ice they would need to transport Sam's body was just too hard to come by. So Sam was buried in the Round Rock Cemetery. A local Methodist minister by the name of Ledbetter volunteered to give Sam a Christian service. Mary Matson, whom Sam had hired as a cook during his brief time in Round Rock, said that she saw a somber Frank Jackson appear after the funeral and drop a clod of dirt upon Sam's grave. A number of years after Sam's death, his sister had a tombstone erected. It bore the words, "A brave man reposes in death here. Why was he not true?" That tombstone has long since been replaced after years of wear and people chipping off pieces of the stone to take as souvenirs. But you can still go to the Round Rock Cemetery and see the grave of Sam Bass for yourself. As for Frank Jackson, well, it's unlikely that we'll ever know what really happened to him. There are stories of him going back to Denton for a short time, then disappearing. Some people said that he became a rancher in West Texas or New Mexico. Ranger Ware thought he encountered Frank at the Arizona State Prison, going by a new name. Jim Murphy died on June 7, 1879, less than a year after Sam did. As the story goes, Frank Jackson was threatening him for betraying Sam, and he requested to go to jail for his own protection. He developed an eye infection in the facility and somehow ingested a large amount of the medicine a doctor had given him to treat it. It's generally accepted that Jim took his own life, but there were rumors that Frank, or a friend of Frank's, had managed to poison him. The little town of Round Rock became famous overnight in the wake of the Sam Bass shootout. Sadly, for many years, the notoriety of Sam Bass overshadowed the public's memory of Deputy Grimes and what befell him that terrible day. Ahijah Grimes, whose name is sometimes written as Elijah, was the nephew of Albert Grimes, who died at the Alamo, and the grandson of Jesse Grimes, one of the signers of the Texas Declaration of Independence. He was doing his job and trying to protect the community when his life was taken from him. His widow's compensation was $200 and a horse that had belonged to a member of Sam Bass's gang. Many people have come to view the gravesite of the infamous Sam Bass without even realizing that there was a victim of his bad deeds and that this victim lies in the very same cemetery. In another sad and ironic twist, the cemetery is located off Sam Bass Road. That's right, Deputy Grimes's final resting place is right near the road named for one of the men responsible for his death. There is a thoroughfare in Round Rock named in Deputy Grimes's honor, A.W. Grimes Boulevard, but it took until the late 1980s or early 1990s for that to come about. By that point, there had already been a road named after Sam Bass for over a century, and reenactments of the Sam Bass shootout had been taking place at Round Rock's annual Frontier Days event since the 1960s. In more recent years, there has been a stronger push to ensure that the community knows who Deputy Grimes was and to honor his memory. In 2015, the Williamson County Sheriff's Office replaced Deputy Grimes's tombstone, which had broken in half. In 2018, the Sheriff's Office named its training center in nearby Hutto after Deputy Grimes. When we hear about Wild West outlaws like Sam Bass, we have a tendency to get swept away in all of the action and adventure and aren't always thinking about the fact that these stories involved real people. In this case, a young man made the ultimate sacrifice in the line of duty. It's so important that we remember victims like Deputy A.W. Grimes, and it's wonderful to see that he's getting more of the attention he has always deserved. So there you have it, the story of Sam Bass. Thanks for listening, and until next time, y'all.